the biggest change that brought to my mindset, journaling. There are organizations which go to Art of Living, learn the Sudarshan Kriya, outsource the day-to-day to AI and do some of the creamy stuff by yourself. Stay longer with the question before jumping to solutions. Adaptability is perhaps the most important trait of a tech leader. Leadership is a trained, acquired, tested, mentored qualities. Steve Jobs used to say, my morning starts with meditation. Better, you can think win-win. I'll quickly tell one technique that we use. It's called matching and mirroring. AI has brought in some unprecedented generational opportunities. Without an agenda is actually so tough nowadays.
Absolutely. Hello everyone. Welcome to the NxtWave podcast. In today's episode, we're exploring what it means to live and lead with presence, clarity, and purpose, especially in a world that's being shaped by rapid technological innovations and AI. Joining us today is Mr. Sasidhar Ambatipudi, HR Director at Pegasystems, an ICF certified professional coach, a certified yoga instructor, and co-founder of the Atman Ramayana Foundation. He brings over a decade of experience in building leadership teams and a deep commitment to spiritual rootedness and inner work. Thank you so much for being with us on this podcast today. Welcome.
Glad to be here.
So, let's start this podcast with something light.
Okay.
You've been a HR director, you've led HR at a lot of organizations, and you're also a yoga instructor.
Yeah.
If you weren't doing either of these things, what's a path you think would be fun to explore?
You're adding more to the list, is it? Okay. Well, I've thought about it several times. I might have been an educationist, designing curriculums across colleges, corporates as well. Or I would have been a humble teacher somewhere, right? So between storytelling and strategy is where my sweet spot is. So I'll figure out in that scale.
Sounds so cool. So when you say education, are you more passionate about teaching in itself or children?
I actually like to teach teenagers and above more, because the level of inquisitiveness, the question, the ability to assimilate, and the ability to give direct feedback is so much higher. There is joy in that. I actually fulfill that passion now, but can do much more. Yeah.
Very interesting. In a world where everyone is chasing technological innovations, what is completely non-tech that you recommend every leader must adopt or at least try?
Wow. Yeah. World's just getting crazy with tech every day, right? You see, interestingly, I was reading this article in Economic Times. A decade ago versus now, since you said tech leaders, right? Our tech leaders are busier than ever before.
Yes.
They are facing more amount of per day's ambiguity. They are taking at least 50 to 80% more decisions per day.
Yes.
So the pace of life, the stress on the mind, and the ability to see through gray instead of black and white, right, is more and more. In times like this, you're always running, you're always active, you don't know when to pause. So what I would recommend for them is directly opposite to what they're going through right now, which is pick up a pen and paper, start journaling. And trust me, the psychological benefits of journaling, I can't even begin to itemize, right? Your ability to gain thought clarity, how you can put your mind out and externalize thinking, how you can reduce noise in the brain, and more importantly, gain conviction on your decisions. These all are some of the initial benefits of journaling. There are other deeper things too, but I would recommend that all these digital savvy leaders put their laptop, iPad, and mobile aside, take a pen and paper, attend a meeting, have a discussion, then think through on what their decisions are, reflect at it, right? It would bring them the much needed pause in what they do in an otherwise very fast life.
Brilliant perspective. I think when you ask people to put pen to paper, because we've gotten so out of touch with writing, I think it forces them to also slow down and think.
Yeah. Fun fact, if I may, right?
Yeah,
a year or two ago, when I was out there to close some loan, they asked me to sign. My signature was not matching with my own earlier signature.
Yes.
And I realized I've been typing so much that they actually had to give me a new form to change my signature and do the entire process. And I'm so glad there is such a process. I mean, my own signature didn't match.
Yeah, did you have to again practice?
Practice.
2 or
I
3
mean,
times?
I now did a new signature and I'm in touch with that.
Okay.
Yeah, so you're right. It's the pen and paper, some of those hard skills. You see, neuroscience now tells us that 100 times if I think a thought versus one time I write it, it's the same impact on wiring on the brain.
Wow.
So journaling, back to what I said, conviction actually emerges from journaling. Right? My thought clarity comes from it. So it's a biological and a neurological process in addition to just using a pen and paper. Hence, I was recommending that. Yeah.
I'm sure dealing with all of these big organizations with so many people, thousands of people, you have very hectic days.
Yeah.
So what's one thing that you do in the middle of all of these chaos that grounds you
I do.
instantly?
Okay. That grounds me instantly.
Yeah. I know it's a
I
little
don't know if
tricky.
I have
I'm
any
just
one.
trying to get something out of this.
Okay. Well, there is one thing I do every day, but I don't know if it instantly gives me, but I've seen consistent, enormous results from that. Every day, the morning 30 minutes after I wake up, they are mine. I perimeter around it, I protect it, make it no noise time. Kids don't wake up, okay, at that time. So no cells, no mobile phones, no mails, no nothing, no music. It's the calm time that I give myself to recharge my battery for the rest of the day. That's when, mind replays my priorities for the day, how important physical health and emotional health is. That kind of firms me up. Maybe that's the word. It sets me for the rigors of the day. So that 30 is something is non-negotiable to me. Maybe that's the best example I can think of. Yes, I did it today too.
Okay.
I can see the question in your eyes. So I think that keeps me sane in an otherwise very fast-paced, multitasking day that lies ahead usually. Weekday or weekend, maybe that's a practice I don't miss.
Okay. I'm going to go on a little tangent here.
Okay.
So many people, if somebody recommends them about waking up early or setting aside time in the morning,
Right.
they can read about it or somebody tells them, especially people who are in engineering colleges and who are used to staying awake at nights, completing assignments the night before. They say,
Right.
we are more active at night, we are night owls, we are not morning people. How do we do that? What would you tell them?
You see, there is this concept of flogging the horse. Okay, a horse goes at its speed. You flog, it will run faster. You flog further, it will again go faster. And you think, this is the speed I want to travel. Right? The horse is burning up energy faster. Right? Beyond a point, it will collapse. Right? Versus if you allow it its speed, rest and again allow its speed and build a discipline around it, the horse's muscles are built to ensure that it's a very long journey with you. Staying late night, skipping meals, skipping sleep, eating chips and working all night, you're flogging. You will get things done. You are at an early, since you said college, I'm assuming these are the 18 to 22-year-olds, right? They will go, but your 30s will be very different than what it should be, right? And this is a fundamental human issue. If I touch a live wire, I get a shock, is an immediate reaction to my action.
Yes.
Versus I eat chips, forget sleep, work late night, don't see sunrise. That reaction comes at a delayed time, which is in your 30s. The more delayed the feedback from nature is, the more I have lack of inspiration to follow a good habit.
Very good.
Hence, it takes a certain sense of discipline and advice from elders on how they crossed path. Right? If you even take people like Ratan Tata when he was there, or even some of the Ambanis, right? Anil Ambani at least, he used to run a marathon, right? Or some of the other leaders who hit gym, or movie actors, or cricket players, right?
Yes.
They all swear by consistency of schedule. If you want to sleep late at night, fine, build a consistent schedule. One day 9 a.m., one day 1 a.m., p.m., it doesn't work that way. That's number one. Point number two is usually people choose that because they haven't quite witnessed the power of a different set of regimen, right? It works for some. By the way, early in my career, I did night shift for a couple of years. I used to work midnight, come home and then sleep. And it takes so many years to come out of that. And as it gets darker, my energy goes higher too. But then it's about how you distribute energy-based activities through the day. Your physical energy may sometimes sustain, but mentally you're drained out. It's time to pause and rest, right? The way to beat the cycle, which is what the solution around it is, you actually front load your day so much in terms of cognitive work or physical work like exercise, etc., right? Or doing some of the most important strainful projects in the first half of the day. Then post lunch you slow down, even slow down, your body will adjust to that cycle. So that once you are awake in the morning, naturally at the time when sunrise happens, etc., you are actually at your fresh nature, the best that you can be. You want to tackle your highest energy point with your most important piece and then gradually phase down.
Okay.
That's the way you over time build around it. No instant noodles on this one.
So deliberately making sure that you have your most important tasks that need a lot of mental energy or physical energy planned earlier in the day, and then gradually slow down so that you teach your body and mind that it's time to unwind.
Correct. And by the way, this is called the ultradian rhythm. This is a concept that already exists, how you match your energy to your day, right? There is also certain amount of food habits, of course. It's like people who exercise in the evening, do intense sweat and then have a fresh bath are actually so fresh they can't fall asleep. That's why I was saying all the physical exertion front load it, mental exertion spread through the day, but in a descending order. You will pretty much get used to a schedule. This is purely the yogi in me speaking because this is what I teach in my classes. Sleep, exercise, energy. These three are like three brothers, okay? And you need to tackle all three at a time, otherwise you don't last your energy out. So
that is what makes you very valuable. You bring that ancient wisdom and combine it with what we do on a day-to-day basis with your experience in leading so many people. We're so glad to have you here again.
Thank you. Thanks to some of my teachers who have seen and shown me that it works and inspired me to take this up actually.
You must have coached so many people by now, but what is that one piece of advice that you got that stuck with you that you keep going back to even today?
That's a good question. You know, there is a saying in Hitopadesha in Sanskrit, right, where like a bee go from flower to collect wisdom. That's how honeybees do.
Yes.
So many teachers have shaped and some amazing advice has come from a health to a mental peace to actually persuasion to actually ambition, everything. But the one that I can't think of passing a day without remembering is this. Stay longer with the question before jumping to solutions, right? There are some beautiful wallpapers on this also, by the way, but I'll tell you what it means to me, right? By and large, coaching as a science, yoga as a science, or even human resources roles that I play currently require me to do a lot of co-thinking, thought partnership, deliberating, nudging, sometimes even challenging the other's thoughts. My work is that beyond and outside the organization as well, right? So, which requires me to suspend my judgment and try to walk in your shoes as to what you're saying. If someone says, I can't sleep well, I shouldn't directly say, stop drinking coffee, right? It's an easy thing to say. What is the difficulty you're facing, right? Deliberate more, stay longer with the question so that you move from the content of what the person's saying to the context in which they're operating in. There's a quotation, by the way, content is king, but context is kingdom. Right? The king operates in a kingdom. Unless you know the context, what you're offering as an advice or solution may not be very relevant. Stay longer with the question. That's what I do.
Very interesting. That also, I mean, what I thought when you said stay longer with the question is not jump into judgments instantly.
Yes.
Even when you have, I mean, whatever situation is presenting, if it's presenting itself as a question or not.
Yeah, correct. Very well said. In fact, then I'll nudge to coaching here. In coaching, we were taught, and it's a rigorous journey of 3 years it took me to get to PCC. We are very clearly taught that when you're interacting with somebody and they use words and phrases which have a recall value for you, don't assume that's what it means for them. Okay, if someone says, I'm unhappy with my work, maybe the word unhappy at work may mean something to you, like a poorly done project. Maybe they are referring to a bad boss, right? So stay longer with them. What does that mean to you? How did it impact you? Why is it necessary for you? If this is solved, what would it look like? Who are you when that is solved? What are your feelings when it is solved? These kind of questions, number one, removes judgment, as you said. Number two, truly explores what it means for the other person. Without that, discussion may not be very robust. Right?
Yes.
So you're
Or
right
meaningful.
from that standpoint. In coaching, it's a very big thing to not assume anything what the other person is saying. Question, counter question, get it out of them. And then reconfirm what you heard and then move forward. So,
Makes absolute sense. Thank you so much.
coaching is
Stay
a beautiful
longer with the
subject.
question.
Yeah.
So you worked with leaders in tech for quite some time. What do you think makes leaders in that sector different from the others?
You see, with my 15, 16 years of overall experience across 4 orgs, my predominant stint was spent with tech leaders. Before that, I was supporting leaders in research, leaders in auditing and tax as well. When I came to tech, I felt I found my true call too, because the pace at which things move,
Yes.
the attention to detail, and above all, for me, tech leaders come with that sense of learning mindset, because the rate at which tech evolves,
You have to have it.
correct, and it's not just managing the pace, it's like getting ahead of tech, because you also have huge leaders to team members to manage, take the vision forward, etc. So I actually talk to this to my leaders and use the term AQ. You all heard of EQ, emotional quotient, IQ, intelligence quotient. AQ is adaptability quotient. Adaptability is perhaps the most important trait of a tech leader, because earlier in the years when tech was one of the many things that organizations had to invest in, now tech is actually driving the strategy, right? We are in the world where AI, agentic, and I don't know when AGI really comes in, but fundamentally rethinking, and that too working in a product IT firm, thinking about tech on a day-to-day basis in everything we do. How do you simplify? How do you make it faster? How do you make it more qualitative, right? These mindsets is what I generally see in tech leaders. Now, in my career, I have seen IT services firm, product firm, etc. If I can further differentiate tech leaders within services and product, there is a very clear difference that emerges too. There is a huge metricizing performance, metricizing output, that comes mostly from the services mindset, efficiencies, cost leadership, some of those. Now, when it comes to the other one, I see a lot around product innovation. How do you get to the clients faster? It's the rapidity at which you scale a particular skill that you feel is important today. By the time day after tomorrow comes, you actually have several people who are ready, right? That speed, that learning mindset, and above all, that sense of what's the customer saying, can we build a solution around that? That innovative mindset is what I see as a hallmark on this side. A lot of qualities, you ask for one, but that's me.
Oh, thank you for giving such an elaborate description. I think in today's world, maybe if we go back 50 years, people in tech didn't have to really learn or adapt to these things. But right now, I think everything is coming together. Like you said, tech leaders also have to think about what's going on in the market.
Right.
It wasn't like that before.
Correct, absolutely. And one trend that I'm seeing is for you to differentiate further in terms of whatever products you bring out in tech, the need to understand not just tech and not just your client's needs, which is anyway given, but the industry that they operate in, right? My ability to build solutions for clients in, say, banking or financial services is very different from how I'll deal with a healthcare, right? So that industry knowledge, ability to match pace with the client and customer, and above all, adopting to create a comparative advantage with others in the organization and others in the market really holds good, really holds good.
So when you're building teams across different cultures and regions, I'm sure it comes with its own set of challenges. So what is a HR challenge that you're proud to have navigated?
I need one or two answer this.
Okay, what are 5 different HR challenges that you're proud to navigate?
Yeah. No, I'll definitely narrow it down. But I'll tell you what, there are plenty, right? And I always felt this is something HR should actually get ahead and give direction to others in the organization too. You see, every organization is getting global.
Yes.
Right? From APAC to EMEA to NA to SA, North America, South America, all those regions. And clearly there are many cultural differences. There are a lot of synergies. The reason why all of us are getting together is one organization, one vision, we all work together. But culturally, personality-wise, as well as the general nuances on how people operate in various geographies actually will help for you to understand as an employee, right? For example, the direct way in which feedback is given in few countries versus how you would like to be slightly quoted, say in India, versus how you directly come to the point in, say, UK, in Dubai, Middle East, versus how you put it in a sense of diplomacy in, say, countries like UK, is very different. So the ability to understand how that impacts business, how it impacts conversations, how it impacts trust and relationship building is really where I feel we play a lot of roles. We have actually done in one of my previous stints in other organizations, we have actually conducted cultural immersion programs whereby, say for example, Singapore teams, India teams and Poland teams, we have done very different way of knowing each other. We have gone down to the level of what are the various interaction points, what does that mean as actions, like providing feedback, coming to meetings, or the tone in the mail, right? Some of these aspects. And then we held workshop where we said, what do you think? What do I think? What's the middle ground? Okay. And then we signed off on certain basic behaviors while leaving the room with a lot of appreciation that if something strange appears, don't question the person yet. Maybe there is something larger going on, right? That developing that pause and reflection were one of the immediate benefits that we got. By the way, there is this book called the Culture Map by Erin Mayer, I believe.
Yeah.
That's a huge bonus for anybody tackling this side of the problem. I have personally benefited a lot. In fact, I have a very good friend in the Czech Republic, a friend of mine who actually mastered this and has his own consultancy on cross-cultural communications now, right? Something I recommend if people are looking for that. So he tells me how responsibility is communicated, how trust is built, how in relationships, when I entrust a task to you, how should my tone be in India versus UK versus, say, an Austria or a Netherlands. It's vastly different. Vastly different. And that's why when people join us and our organization, or we do this in our foundation as well, when we talk to people beyond a geography, we actually have an initial discovery session to just set the tone and the pace. It will be tough to directly jump into business, and relationship kind of becomes very to the point. Yes. And you never really uncover the other person truly, right? You need to play long innings, get beyond the role. You need to have a transaction relationship, then it's a different story.
So important to actually make sure that what you're trying to say is actually what's being communicated to the other
Absolutely.
side. And I think it becomes more challenging as cultural nuances also set in.
Correct. By the way, initial thing around communication, right? Communication is not what you say, it's what others receive, right? So that itself tells you, think the receiver first, then really the teller. I may have the most flowery language, but if I can't get my point to you, that's not great communication, is it? So, yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. Now, let's dive into coaching. There's this ongoing debate about whether leadership skills are innate or whether they can be built. Are leaders born or are they built? What has been your experience?
Age-old question, right from Socrates' time, by the way. In the world of management, the most researched topic is leadership styles.
True.
Apparently. So, several forms have come, but I would like to believe, basis my own experience of seeing people grow to a leadership position, is it's a mix. There are certain innate qualities that will boost your ability to be a great leader, such as your ability to speak, your hold on language, your ability to see emotional cues in people, your charisma. Okay, these are innate. Some people have it or some people don't, right? But by and large, leadership is trained, acquired, tested, mentored qualities, right? I would like to refer to a book, by the way, which has the most recent publication on leadership. It's called the Transpersonal Style of Leadership.
Okay.
Okay, we have heard situational leader, servant leader, leader by objectives, or leadership by exceptions, and several other models. This talks about a leader who goes beyond ego. The egoless leader. Ego is not as much a spiritual concept as much as it is about, do I sacrifice my immediate term needs or wins for the larger objective that I've set out to do? These are people who don't back off from feedback. These are people who actually ask a lot of questions. They listen actively with an intent not to respond, but to understand your point of view. And these are people who can rally the team to a larger vision. That's called the transpersonal, beyond your personal leadership style. Given that as a viewpoint, it's very much an acquired quality, right? And you acquire it how? You acquire it through testing. You start off with role modeling. You observe. All of us have observed our managers and tried to understand, how you talk, how you sit, how you shake hands. I used to see all of these, right? Because most of our education is not a finishing school, right?
Yes.
You have to figure out some of these. Then as you move on, you start managing a team. There was a time I managed a team. Clearly, you learn, you fail, you'll be surprised at the feedback they give while you think you would have done good things, right? That is where your mentor comes into play, right? From a role model to a mentor, right? Whereby they teach you, they coach you, they share their lived experiences because they have walked the path ahead of you and then turning back to help you. And then beyond a point, somewhere all management starts with self-management. You have to sit, introspect, you have to sit, reflect, consume and assimilate feedback. That's how leaders are made. Steve Jobs used to say, my morning starts with meditation. Without that, I cannot. And what do I meditate on? What else can I be? What is my potential that I haven't used? Things like that, right? These all are leadership qualities, apparently. Or a Ratan Tata. He has redefined how humility as a source can be power in leadership styles, right? And as a coach, when I see people looking at leadership, general sense is leadership equates power and influence only, right?
Traditionally, yes.
Of course, yes, influence is good, but how? You use positional authority as a leader, or you actually start thinking on how am I attacking the needs of people? How am I serving those, right? So given all this, I strongly feel your innate qualities can boost your leadership style, but what you acquire will build your fundamental leadership style.
So what I'm hearing is, while there are some people who have that natural edge, everyone has to go through the work.
Go through that, and everybody has the potential to get to a leader-like quality. Of course, within leaders there are several layers of natural leader thing, but not an impossible thing to acquire, I feel. Yeah.
And everyone needs a role model and also a mentor to make this journey easier.
A mentor would vastly accelerate your journey. Not everyone's may be blessed, but my personal experience, when I went to my seniors and asked for help, it's very rare that I did not get. By the way, we teach it in some of our coaching sessions also, where we talk about seeking help and courage in parallel.
Seeking help and courage.
And courage. Generally, there is a sense that if I seek help, I'm weak.
Yes.
I am unfulfilled. Fill in the blank is what I go to people to help. No. You do things faster, better. You can think win-win. Other person also gains something. It's actually courageous to raise hand and say that I need help, I'm failing, or give me feedback. Generally people say, hey, I've done something, just eyeball it or glance. They won't use the words, give me feedback.
Correct.
Because the word feedback is associated with fear and things like that. Call me strange, but there are times when I go to the manager and say, give me feedback on this. What do you think? The intent there is help me refine my output better, or help me develop further as a human, right? But it takes its own journey.
I'm sorry for the word and the language, but I'm reminded of one of my teachers in school. So everyone says it's okay to ask questions, come and ask questions, but as students, I think especially when you're in a crowd, it gets really difficult to stand up and ask a question. So what he did, he said, if you think that you will be seen as a fool if you ask a question, if you don't ask, you'll remain a fool. So that really kind of encouraged all of us to stand and ask.
See, that's how mentors will talk. They will ignite a thought that will lead you to some reflection and behavior change. Very good example. Very good example.
All right. Moving on. When you are assessing someone's potential to be a leader, are there any telltale signs or any behavioral aspects or anything that informs you that this person has incredible potential? How do you measure potential?
It's a great question. It's difficult, not easy, but what I look for, right, depending on what my needs are to look for a leader, I usually look for their ethical direction and integrity first, right? That conviction that this is the way to do, these are borders I won't cross, are very important. When I look for that, I look for that. Second thing is, there is this formula that I used to once use. How consistent are they in terms of their messaging, speeches? You know, people want predictability when they look to and follow a leader.
So important.
Yeah.
Yes.
If I don't know how my action will trigger a reaction, right, is usually very tough place to be in and be called a leader, right? That C of consistent behaviors, right? Saying that what you stand for and how you communicate your vision, right? It has to be some sense of consistency. And that flows naturally into communication, which is the second C, because who I am, what I do, and how I tell and how I inspire people is really very important for me. So I look at communication not in terms of language competence, but in terms of ability to defend an idea, right? If challenged, if you are sure, you will be able to put points of view forward. That is a communication for me. So there are these 2 to 3 things that I look for. And of course, there is always this ability to say, I have to look beyond myself for a leader. Okay, I'm not saying be a selfless military commander, not every day found here, but that ability to look at the bigger picture than the team, that is a leadership quality for me. If all of us are looking at trees, they should look at the whole forest. Okay, that big picture thinking talks back to the transpersonal leadership that I was telling, right?
Yes.
They don't mind somebody walking up to them and say, boss, bad idea. I think because of what you told, I failed. Can I try it differently? The boss wouldn't take it in a different manner, but say, why do you think that works? Okay, how can I help you? Right? Because the eye is on the larger picture. In coaching angle, we call it the ground view and the terrace view, by the way.
Terrace view.
Terrace view. So from the ground, what do you see? The 3 to 4 people around. I go to the first floor, 8th floor, or maybe go to the terrace. I suddenly see this as in a smaller thing compared to the wider context, right? So the leader should actually have that, the third C, context, right? That happens when I take a terrace view. I look at that in leaders usually. Somebody who's extremely day-to-day tactical alone can be a great manager, but you need to develop a perspective for something larger than the day-to-day. That is leadership quality. So consistency, communication, context, all in the light of beyond ego. How do I look at a big picture? That's what it is.
Very precise and very informative.
Thank you.
Is this something that you've developed on your own?
The 3 C's?
Yes.
Yeah. Over time, it has turned out to be that way. I started thinking a lot around myself during the coaching journey that I had. And then my own career trajectory, how I've been learning a lot from my own mentors and my seniors. I could see these coming out at various times of my interaction naturally. So I just package them all together, then really do anything.
That is what marks a genius.
Nice. Thank you.
So we were talking about your framework on how, your absolutely wonderful framework on how to recognize leaders. So from mentorship and a coaching perspective, what are the different approaches you take when you're coaching for short-term performance and long-term leadership?
Clearly, the spade lanes have to be very different. Usually, for anything short-term, I have seen that the asks are predominantly what they do versus long term is who they are, right? The short term focus on skills, right? Help me coach on presentation, basic communication, or some of the other needs which are just a part of their role, but nothing innate to who they are, their values and something, right? The moment it gets to long term, it's a different game altogether, and I'll come to it. So short term is mostly environments, cases. That's what we use to really coach them. Or in fact, I wouldn't even call short term needs as coaching. They are more mentoring / training / sometimes even counseling, right? Because there is a particular thing you want to move beyond to, or move past, or acquire something and then close the deal, right? Usually most of our learning programs are built for that. With AI, the way you can consume content has become so fast, right? 12 hours worth videos in half an hour kind of thing. So people are now able to get very fast those hacks and tips that they can do for anything that they need at a short term.
Yes.
Most of the examples I've seen are around the 2 to 3 things I just said. Beyond that, it will be around just get me an email that is very influencing. I want to position this as a sale versus I really want my manager to say yes to this proposal. How best can I write? It's very task situation oriented. Long term is where the fun is, and long term takes long time also. Okay?
Yes, naturally.
Long term actually slightly alters how people perceive themselves and enable others to perceive them, right? So long term has a component of who they are, what are they becoming, what are the value systems, how are they thinking the story through in their head, how are they coming across, some of those aspects of it. You need more detailed data on the individual to start off with. You see, when you have tests, psychometric tests, you have the behavioral components and you have the personality components, like say MBTI. MBTI is a personality, right?
Yes.
It tells you who you are, and it doesn't change vastly between year 1 to a year 3 to a year 5. Versus there are those other behavioral which may change depending on what context, who's your new boss, what's your role like, which country you're in, things like that, right?
Yes.
So taking the former, which is your personalities, you start really ideating and talk a lot around your goals, your fears, right? Your enablers, your strengths. Strengths here is what do you find joy in, what energizes you while doing, not just what are you good at.
I like that definition.
Yeah, right. Strength is that which you love doing. Weakness is what you loathe doing. And your job is a mix of both, usually, right?
Yes.
There are aspects that you love doing more than the others. So that's why they say align to strengths. That's what we mean in organizations, that if the project requires these 10 skills to combine for an output, what you are good at, do more of that, right? So that the team, that's the whole fundamental unit of an organization now. The team that plays to the strengths, right? That's how it works out. So for those to be recognized and really affected long term, you need very different simulated environments, thinking through on scenarios, how people act, react, or even interact in a very different situation, and then pausing for reflection. Coaching has a lot to do with our ability to evoke awareness of the subject in terms of how they are thinking of themselves and how they are coming across. So in a mentoring conversation, you usually see things like, so what do you wish to do? What stops you? What help do you need? What resources do you want? Do you need anybody to enable you? Do you want more examples? Can I talk to somebody on your behalf, kind of thing? Your coaching, which is mostly the long-term internal changes, will talk about what is the belief you are operating with? What makes you think that is the best way? If you have nothing to lose, what step will you take, right? If you have to redesign the thinking around it, by the way, that concept is called cognitive reframing, very essential part for long-term trainings, right? If this is how you have put the statement, how can you stretch it? How can you compress it? Making them think from many angles. If they say my relationship with somebody is just not happening and I hate them, blah, blah, then you tell them, if you are in their shoes and you have to defend your action, what reasons would you say? Then they will say the most plausible reasons, and then you say, come back to yourself. What if these reasons were really applicable to them? Would you look at that relationship different? right? If that is the way, generally, do you develop a sense of forgiveness for people? If next time this happened, do you have a positive intent in moving forward? If today is person X, if tomorrow is person Y, how will you approach the situation going forward, right? That will alter their thinking and approach to a situation, which is more long term. Companies invest in executive coaching a lot because they want to remove any mental hurdles people may have accumulated through life, right? And it's not just about sending them to a Harvard school for a certificate. It won't happen. That will give them good skill, very reputed things, but nothing will teach me to be fearless. Nothing will teach me to think beyond my day-to-day. Nothing will teach me to say, let me not think in this pattern. I'll break this pattern of thought. That requires coaching. That's the short term, long when it comes to coaching. So coaching is mostly long term.
Okay.
Medium to long term, rather, let me put it this way.
All right. So when you're coaching someone and when you're asking all of these questions where they have to really think through an answer,
Right.
I think it takes a certain level of courage again to answer with honesty. How do you get a person to be at that vulnerable 100% honesty stage? Does it take time? What is your approach?
It's a brilliant question, actually. You see, there's a very famous McKinsey model which tells that from a bossy boss to actually being a very nurturing and a challenging boss, where people will do anything for you.
Nurturing and challenging.
Yes. You have to pass through a critical stage of psychological safety. Okay? I can tell my people tomorrow, stay up in the night, get me the deck. But there are people who will not say that, but people will do that for them.
Yes.
The discretionary effort, how do you unlock, right? We have studied a lot around this. By the way, when I look back at the coaching principles, in the initial phases itself, it says builds trust and safety with the client. Okay? So there is a science of how rapport is built. There is a science around how I gain the trust, how I give them a safety net to say that in this space between us, be your best self. Nothing will get out. At the same time, no judgment. Above all, you are more important in this situation. I am your thought partner, an extension of your mind. That is how in the initial sessions we set the tone. Depending on how easy or tough it is for them, they open up over time. But by and large, I have seen within the first 2 conversations, people will bring out their best. So I'll quickly tell one technique that we use. It's called matching and mirroring. As part of the wider net to build trust and safety, okay, it's one of the principles of ICF, International Coach Federation, by the way. The technique is called mirroring and matching. If you are talking in a particular tone, particular stage, particular speed, particular choice of words, my ability to match it will give you subconscious safety and a sense of familiarity. Our ability as a coaches to build trust is not at a conscious level, it is at a subconscious level, which is 95% of your mind.
Yes.
Your 95% will figure out the 5%. I can shake hands, build rapport, tell where are you from, which city, your common interest stays. That gives you a position to mirror the person. But actually mirroring and matching is when you get under the skin. With all good intentions, of course. And by the end of the first or second, if especially you are a senior trained coach, it becomes very easy beyond a point, right? So, but it may take longer for some of the other relationships like mentoring or others where you talk to the work, then you talk and address some of the in person. That's why, by the way, in coaching, as much as we'll be talking about a particular goal that the client wants to talk on, we also get them back to how they are sitting, how their language is, what emotional cues they are releasing. If they are releasing deep sigh every time we talk about their family, we say that, I'm noticing this in you. Is there anything in your mind about family? And they usually come out and say, you know what, some unwanted pain in that relationship or things like that. So your ability to watch the unsaid go beyond the words actually gives the other person that I'm in a very able hands and a person who really cares about an outcome. That builds trust. So there is a professional trust because of which you enter the room, but there is a personal trust which elevates the dialogue. You have to be doing both.
And from what you're saying, I'm gathering that if you're really passionate about this, it is a very fulfilling job to do as well.
Absolutely. See, in all candor, last 3 years I've been doing coaching, just got my PCC, professional coach certification, but I've been in touch with several others. Interestingly, people in various walks of life integrated coaching into their job, their work, their pursuits, whether it is NGO or teaching or trainer or actual corporate professional. Most of people who pursue coaching integrate coaching into what they do, then leave everything and become a full-time coach. Few people do that as well, people who are super passionate about it. But your interactions, how you think about yourself, how you deal with conflicts in your life, since you have been trained and talk and help other people, you help yourself a lot. So people find a lot of fulfillment in bringing coaching elements into your day-to-day life. That's how I have generally seen, and that's what I intend to do as well. I will continue to coach. I will continue to do a lot on that, but whether it is my primary 1 or 2 pursuits, I will strengthen those with coaching, then replace them with coaching.
So, what coaching approaches have you found most helpful when training senior leaders to adapt to the changes that are brought in by AI?
Well, clearly AI has brought in some unprecedented generational opportunities, and everybody wants to master it, though many few have even figured out what it is. Currently, there is a lot of excitement in terms of what AI could do. So leaders are actually in a stage of completely ideating on what else can happen, and this is a very market view than just any one organization view. The actual use cases versus the promise of what AI can do, the latter is very high compared to the former, right? So that leaves our leaders in a state of guessing, ideation, as well as ability to consume a lot of content, talk to a lot of people, trying to see where else with a hawk's eye, everything that they do to understand where is the opportunity, right? And AI is not static, right? Ever since ChatGPT came in that evening in India time, right? To now, it has evolved a lot. So that ability to learn, etc., has become a very important feature when I look at some of our leaders here. So what I do, back to coaching and AI, right? I think it's firstly an ability to provide an environment where they can completely experiment and redesign what they can, right? So for example, if say there is a particular product you build, or one of the persons I'm coaching outside right now happens to be a teacher in one of the famous Ivy League institutes in India. He's a lecturer actually, right? He's trying to reframe the entire syllabus in terms of what it is and how to do it. Similarly, there is a leader in one of the organizations who's a fairly senior level in engineering world. For him, it's about, in this world of AI where everybody's talking product and this one, how can I be visible to my own leaders, saying that when you think AI and innovation, think of me. How do I position myself? These are the problems people are coming to me with. Yes. So what tells me is people are thinking a lot around the capabilities, the potential, etc. But somewhere the people angle to it should not be lost. So what I do is really to bring the team, the competencies, the immediate circle and their own learning into the mix of the conversation when it is pure play ideation on products and technicalities. That's one of the big things that I do. So from doing what, how to who, which is a person, is what I generally bring in the equation, and there is usually a pause because that's not what they're expecting, right?
Sure.
That is one thing. The second thing literally is, I think the innovative mindset will call this out, and in fact, many, even Bill Gates or Steve Jobs say this a lot. Try, fail, take feedback, and then win. The cycle goes as such. With the coming of AI, what happened is try fast, fail fast, try fast. The word fast is everywhere.
Yes.
So people are looking for the speed of everything. That is the second thing that I coach people on, saying that speed is important, but you have to determine what is a terminal velocity for you as an individual. We all have our own upper limits, right?
Yes.
What is the velocity beyond which you won't function, right? How do you know that it works? How do you know, what's the evidence that you can work faster than this? what results have you delivered that point, for them to introspect, literally, right?
Yes.
So that's the other piece. Slightly vague answer, but candidly, we all are figuring out in terms of what people are looking for, what are they needing, etc. Because the change will take a couple of years before something really tangible comes out where jobs and organizations are redefined. Right now, there is a lot of hype around what all it can do, but not really day-to-day changes that everyone's experiencing. I'll tell you what, 70 or 75% is what I remember reading in HBR article recently on how executives are hopeful that AI will help. But in terms of adoption on a day-to-day, less than 10% of the organizations have actually implemented an AI solution in their work.
Why do you think that is?
Because people are more hopeful and looking at the possibilities than really having a product that they can launch on the ground for behavior change, right? What it can is far higher than what it is right now. That is where people have to be shown the mirror, right? How much outfit is your ideation versus possibility? What is the foreseeable stress around it? At the same time, how best are you channelizing? And in all this, who are your team members helping you? Right? That's the whole logic.
I really love how you brought the individual into the front and center of this question.
Yeah. Being in HR,
Yeah.
if I don't, who else will?
We've talked about senior leaders. How does it change when you are training emerging new age leaders?
Yeah, we covered this very briefly, but maybe I will double click on that. When I look from emerging to established to leader of leaders, the two things that will stand out for me is the amount of years they are through the grind of being a leader, number one. Number two, what all experiences have they intentionally gathered, reflected and assimilated as learnings. These two things. What was your journey and what did you become out of the journey? Briefly, these two things, right? At an emerging level, earlier I was mentioning that they need role modeling, right? They need to see more of experiences in a controlled environment coming to them. They should be given that long rope to say, try, fail, reflect, come back. At a leadership level, though it is at an entry level, you are already seasoned enough that we generally assume that basic professional etiquette around taking accountability, being ethical, or even being able to sense an opportunity and taking a proactive step are already there, right? So emerging leaders, we do a lot of brainstorming around what skills that you have that your role needs that you're unable to translate into action. Okay, and then trying to play an enabler role there. But as you mature, you start thinking, and they say there's a very famous quote, leaders are lonely, because you're usually at the top and people look to you for answers, right? Typically when coaches talk to leaders, one of the things they say is, how do I know that they are thinking fine of me? How do I know their perception of me? That is what runs in their mind, because there is no one person sitting there giving you day-to-day feedback. They would expect you to deliver results. If results and outcomes are fine, sometimes how you achieve the results are overlooked. But you need to develop that in the mid-level leadership layer, right? Which is pretty much one level below, say, the absolute heads of the organizations, in terms of how do you seek feedback? How do you get those cues from your teams, from your directs, from your peers, in terms of how you are coming across, right? So ability to understand that is really what's in the forefront. Also in terms of some of the key things around delegation or ability to get time, ability to build other junior level leaders or very tenured level, reliable mascots for you in the team. How are you doing that? Right? How many people can you rally? Leaders need followership, right?
Yes.
And followership is not by,
Structure.
org chart. Yeah, it is through inspiration. That is usually the coaching needs there. You get to a leader of leaders, then obviously it's mostly around how do you know you're running at full potential? Can you see a gap, turn it into an opportunity, right? Can you really inspire people to be their best versions, right? How much do you talk versus listen in a room full of people, right? So those are usually at that level, people are extremely self-aware. right? They know how they come across, they know what it takes, they don't mind taking feedback. That whole initial energy of my title disappears to actually what's my value contribution. People look for meaning more thoroughly at that level. So questions like, how fulfilling is it for you, right? That's a level where we say, what's the legacy you want to leave, right? A year from now, what do you want the company to be thinking about? If there is an anonymous survey that they need to fill, then you backtrack. What's stopping you today? Versus, is there a version 2.0 of you? Can you visualize? And then, do you have the team? Are you still having trouble taking hard calls? Right? These are the questions. We have to get into the, by the way, these are not very fixed, these 5 questions for this slot, but you have to play by the rule. There are people who mature way ahead in the race, right? They have to be treated separately. You have to be more challenging them, give them more opportunities, give them more feedback, more longer rope to fail, retain them in their areas of interest, put a lot of investment in them through mentorship. Yeah, so it all has to be the overall leadership level view to things. So coaching can be a great help in partnering with their thought process in terms of how are they solving this in their mind. More importantly, if this is the way it happened and you are hearing the same story as separate narratives from various people, you may even ask them, what is the story you're telling yourself? Right? We ask questions like this, and that will change the perspective for them. At that level, perspective change is what's needed. Then really saying by the end of month 1, I'll get this skill. It won't work that way, right? If you alter their thinking, that one person, you can impact an organization, right? Look at the multiplicity of service that you can render as a coach. So that's how it works.
Very, very important and meaningful questions. So my perspective is that they see someone who is responsible for outcomes is generally more lean and flexible. But someone who's only thinking about outputs is more rigid about what they need to get done within that day. And that is the kind of person who has a list of things to take care of and is just thinking about day to day. And those people are generally not so accommodating. I don't know. Just from
can be one way, absolutely. One of the things we train when people become IC to manager is that ability to shift focus from being a task person to a people person. Right? I do versus I get things done are very different skills.
Yes.
My technical competence doesn't guarantee this. People usually struggle because that is a evolution phase of career where their outcomes is what they feel. The what is important than how piece of it, right? That how piece of it has to be coming from their top, their parallel, their peers, as well as they themselves reflecting, right? So to a large section, you are right. One is, of course, self-awareness, some of these. But the other thing is how success is described to them has to evolve.
So important.
Yeah, so important. If success metric for them is get these 10 closed versus build a relationship with the vendor, get these 10 closed, at least one letter of compliment in a year, will change their perspective on how they are looking. Right? If my metrics are extremely numerical only, my behaviors will follow suit. That's why when we being in HR, when I look at coaching, this is what I look at, saying that how are my processes facilitating evolution of a person, rather than when things are going wrong, you get a coach, which is not how it should be. When things are fine also, you should get a coach to say what better I can do. Coaching by definition is I'm good at something, how can I get better? It's not a healing mechanism. So to your point, it's about how is success measured in their mindset. For them, is it a transactional intervention versus is it a long-term relation? If the same thing happens to a peer who sits next to them throughout their career, they will do it differently. Because the whole purpose of a relationship, the need to smoothen things, also plays on their mind. Unfortunate reality. And of course, other things like pressure of deadlines, how people are in their normal May the 1st sitting on a holiday is different from, when I act under pressure.
Now let's talk about balance, well-being and inner work. With all the pace and pressure around the work that you do, how do you find that balance?
When I started this whole coaching journey versus where I am now, a lot of things evolved in my own habits, and I've kept a journal for that to just see how my thought process have been evolving. And the one thing that helped me the most, I do several things, by the way, I've spoken about yoga and other things. What I'm about to tell now is perhaps the biggest change that brought to my own mindset, and that is journaling. Here's what I do. My whole journaling piece is really at the forefront of it. When I started coaching journey in 2021 or 2022, we were also trained on several other things like NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and several other allied subjects. So those brought about some very good habits, and over time they became so much me that now they are integrated into my schedule and ways of working. Right? Working for a product company, I'm perhaps one of the very few who take a notebook to meetings, write down, and then think about it, draw diagrams, ideate in it before I build a PPT, some of these things, right? Journaling has been a game changer for me. So one of the things I do is every Friday night, and for the last 1 year perhaps, every Friday night, I reflect on the week's notes. Net, did I move the needle? Net, did I gain something? Net, did I give something? Those are the random thoughts I have. Versus started, stopped, did I procrastinate? That kind of self-report card happens. That's journaling for me. Once I look at all of that and then looks at the next 1 week schedule on what are the important meetings, etc. And of course, what do I need to prepare, think over the weekend and things like that. I eventually come across at least 1 or 2 behaviors that I should emulate for the following week. Those I write down. This week, do not delay talking to so-and-so. Versus this week, definitely work on that pet project, which is important, not urgent, so I've been putting in the back burner. Create 1 slide out of whatever you're imagining. I usually train a lot of people in my organization on several things. Right? Like I'm talking around how to be more productive in this age and day. I'm talking to them on the 8th. So for that, build few examples and ideas. That's how I put it in the journal. Eventually over time, 100% of journal happens. I mean, you can put it at 90-95%. The thing with that is come ad hoc items, come distractions, come laziness and procrastination, my best friend. Okay. You tend to have that defense within you to push it aside. Okay, and this has been established. There is an old podcast and scientific journals on this one as to how journaling enhances willpower. People who journal versus not, they have, I think, 30% higher probability of achieving. That's number one. Journaling will align your thoughts with your values because you tend to write what you are, because journaling is your own thing under no pressure. Because you do that, you strengthen your values, that the choices you make in your work align to you. Because of which there is less anxiety at role. There is more well-being. There is that sense of I'm doing the right thing, that firmness in your decisions.
Conviction,
so all
like
of
you
it,
said.
convictions, right? All of it comes from journaling. So that's perhaps the one thing that has helped me a lot. If one of my best friend appreciated this fact so much that she actually gifts me a journal a year. A beautiful diary with some templates inside. And that helps you think a lot. If it says, what is the one thing you have gratitude for? You know what happens? There is a business case for gratitude. And I realized it over time. Gratitude is not just a good and happy thing to do. You have a sense of gratitude every day. And once in a time when you have to sit for a hard conversation, a performance feedback for somebody, or a difficult message needs to be passed to somebody, you will eventually have your mind searching for good things in the situation too. Because in gratitude, that's what you do. You figure out a reason to thank somebody. So I have personally had cases where managers have come back to me and said that I was able to start conversations on what they are doing well without friction this time. Because I've journaled for a while, 21 days or so. Imagine doing that consistently. You spot the good in others, you spot the good in situations, so you tackle challenges very differently. These all are important for organizations. Somehow these are parked aside as soft skills or lesser known skills. But
once short-term trainings.
Short-term trainings. But you can't do a 1 hour workshop on gratitude and forget about it. You need to have exercises around it. I would rather do 5 minutes a day for 10 days rather than do a 1 hour session on a Monday morning. That will build momentum. So these actually change, and these are what, when we say culture of an organization, this is what it is. In my previous organization, we used to do it. We used to have our weekly meetings. 14 of us used to come together. Randomly, at least 5 of them will say, hey, I want to thank this person. Last week I was stuck. I raised my hand. She helped. Someone will say, I want to thank my mother, not in this room, but she took care of my child, so I was able to do that call. Over time, it became such a culture that people had more time, and we said, can you please send mail about your thank you? Those 1 or 2 cases we'll talk about in the room. It became an attitude.
So you're automatically looking for good things.
You're looking for good things. You're looking for good in any situation, right? You are rewiring your mind to say what's obvious, don't settle, go beyond the obvious, right? That changes your mindset. These are intangibles that you can't put in a scorecard and say, right? But these go a long way in changing perspectives.
Thank you. That was a beautiful insight.
Thank you. Do you journal, by the way?
I used to.
Yeah.
I journal only when I have very difficult emotions that I'm not able to process.
Fantastic. Journaling really helps there as well.
Yes, it gives me instant clarity on what is it that I am really suffering with and what is it that I'm imagining.
That separation is
for myself.
beautiful. No, that's very inspirational, actually, I would say. That's where most of humanity have a problem currently, right? The ability to separate noise from music or facts, right?
True.
So there's a book called Noise, by the way, that actually talks about how in your head you make up stories way more than what it is, and how that clutters your ability to take judgment.
Yes.
I think it's one of the New York Times bestseller. It's called Noise.
That's actually very important, especially if you are dealing with heavy emotions. I don't think logic applies anymore, even though you're a very intellectual person. Otherwise.
May I take liberty to say something on neuroscience on this?
Sure.
Right? I learned it in neuro-linguistic programming. How, when we don't get marks in our childhood, we used to get beating and then say, I will ask this question, read it. You're not reading, I'll hit you again, right? What it does, not very different in organizations also, is like, do this, otherwise your performance score will go down. Whenever there is fear, the reasoning part of your brain, which is part of your neocortex, right, your new brain, it goes down.
Yes.
It's inversely proportional.
Yes.
What we try to do in our mind is increase fear and get things done. It won't. It is inversely proportional, right? You need psychological safety for innovation. So organizations that say I want to innovate, or people who say that I want to be the best I am, first have to look for what am I afraid of. If that is playing on your mind, even remotely, rest assured you are not running at your 100 speed.
Definitely.
You're not. As simple as that. Because the brain works in a manner that the moment fear comes in, there is that adrenaline rush to protect yourself, which is fight, flight, or freeze, right? The 3 Fs. At that time, there is no I word, innovation. There is no C word, creativity. You just can't. That's why I was saying in the previous question that psychological safety, when provided by leaders, pulls in people to go beyond their limits to do something for them. That is the secret sauce. Can you measure this? But you have to innately. That's the beauty of neuroscience, where evolving science is now telling as to why certain behaviors will work and click, why some leaders are massively inspirational, right? So there are people who, like Steve Jobs' presentation, why he bakes in neuroscience principles into it. Plus his own conviction shows up out there, right?
Yes.
So, yeah, just a little trivia there.
So talking about balance, well-being and your experience in coaching, you also co-founded the Atman Ramayana Foundation.
Yes.
Congratulations on a successful year.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about what led you to this?
Atman Ramayana Foundation, April 2024, along with my co-founder. His name is K. Srini, a very established entrepreneur himself. we both were ideating on how to scale things, right? We have this innate conviction that the wisdom that we see in our ancient is as applicable now as it was ever, right? Truly timeless. And then, by virtue of the roles we are in, we also started looking at various other research papers. It's so surprising that you take any top university in the world, or World Economic Forum, Future of Skills, and some of those reports, right? You'll be surprised that the top 5 to 7 skills are actually what's found in some of the role model characters in our own scriptures, right? Critical thinking, staying and maintaining your ethical compass, or ability to have relationships in a manner that your work is not disturbed, right? In terms of how you face adversity, how you stay detached, how you get the best version of yourself by actually seeing a big picture, how not to be bogged by the frivolous things of life. These are some of the things, whether you call it critical thinking and other things now. We found a very strong correlation to how, and to our example, the story of Rama in Ramayana was very powerful case of role modeling. I look at Ramayana as a manual for self-mastery, right? Of course, there is story, there is a huge inspiration, there is a geographical angle, there is a historical angle, there is also a huge character building angle to it, right? And then what we did was we put up Atman Ramayana Foundation and said, let us contextualize it to our current day, whereby you bring in elements of neuroscience, you bring in top tier research that happens around how leaders of today and tomorrow are framed. And then you look at the specific instances of Ramayana, and it's so beautifully interwoven that it brought us to a new vista of thinking when it comes to how to apply the teachings of Ramayana. Our problem that we are trying to solve was current understanding of Ramayana in the world is extremely flawed and incomplete. We have people making stories out of it, cartoons out of it. We have movie makers making a wrong interpretation out of it. At the same time, who actually read the original version, right? Very few.
Yes.
So we brought in our expertise, and then what we said was, let us bridge the gap from a document that has survived through ages through actually my day-to-day. What is the gap? How do I apply learnings? And along came the idea of constructing very beautiful workshops. Now we have expanded it to say at a school level, your fundamental values have to be instilled. Values such as truthfulness, respect, ability to say no to things that you don't feel subscribed, not go with the group for everything, right? That pressure, how do you handle, etc. As you go to the more senior grades like class 7, 8, 9, 10, we start thinking, what does ambition mean? What does a career mean? What does a goal setting mean? Who will you take along? What are the stories you can get inspired by? What exercises you can learn? Those we do at a school level. At a college level, we then started looking at what does responsibility mean? How do you hold yourself accountable to something that you promised but didn't deliver? What does righteousness mean at your context, right? To a corporate level, of course, we took it to say righteousness in your organization means what? How do you adhere? Where do you look for conveniences versus the correct thing to do? The C versus C again, right? So these kind of workshops, very experimental, lot of activity based, along with a journal for a lot of self-reflection. That's how our thinking has evolved. And in the last 1 year, whether it is through edutainment, through various merchandise, right from drawing for kids to actually solving puzzles to actually jars with a lot of gratitude related exercises whereby you reshape your thinking on your surroundings. We have come quite some way, but more to be done. But fundamentally, our fierce inspiration has been the story of Ramayana, because somebody could face adversity and still be resilient. Why can't we do it on a day-to-day basis? That is our fundamental vision, and hence we'll continue to do a lot of formats of learning and tangible and intangible experiences.
Absolutely beautiful and very inspiring.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
We need people who can really join us on this mission, because we realized at Quantum, if you want to impact, you need lots and lots of people who subscribe to the vision, get inspired, share more inspiration to us, and get to do it. So from 0 to 1 to 15, we have scaled. We have a lot of lessons we learned, but fundamentally we realized that when we looked back after a year, we were transformed people. Our initial design versus now is very different. What we thought we can achieve is different, and more importantly, how we are approaching is now very different. Perhaps more mature than last year.
Congratulations on that too.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
How do you see practices like yoga influencing modern leadership, especially in areas around empathy, resilience, compassion?
It's a profound question to explore. And I strongly feel with all humility that not enough justice is done yet. And somewhere, whether it is through the Atman Ramayana Foundation or by virtue of the yoga certification that I had, where I met some amazing people and learned few things, and I'm on the path still, I can venture to say a few things on this, right? First and foremost, if you take the subject of yoga itself, right, contrary to popular thinking, yoga is not postures, right? If I look at the entire syllabus of what yoga promises to deliver and take the whole postures piece of it, it's less than 1%. There is 99% other areas to explore, and yoga starts, as you know, right, it's an 8-limbed process of self-transformation and self-transcendence, actually, right? The first two talks about yama and niyama. Those are your moral codes, social codes for you to live by, to even prepare you for the real yoga that comes from step 3. So the yama niyama are actually 5+5 codes to live by. Examples like swadhyaya, self-inquiry, self-study. These are actually extremely powerful pieces of practices that are applicable to whatever you do, including organizational leaders who are shaping careers, transforming economy, contributing to jobs and other things, right? So ability to do self-inquiry, ability to not have a mindset of hoarding, which is practicing minimalism, aparigraha, that's the name in Sanskrit. Aparigraha is non-hoarding, and it can mean to just, I have 20 watches and 40 shoes. It's not only that. It can also mean, I want credit all the time, right? Give it away. Be minimalist. What do I want? Do I want to be in the center of every event? Do I want to be in every interview that I get an opportunity in? Versus I position others, sharing credit. That is all minimalism in action, right? Asteya, non-stealing. If somebody did a good job, if I'm not complimenting them, am I stealing the credit, right? If somebody deserves an opportunity, an experience or an exposure or a mentor, am I robbing them of the opportunity? Am I acting in a manner that people around me are inspired or perplexed all the time, right? That is asteya. So these all have a huge amount of applicability in the context of life you're in. Yoga was not built for the 60 plus who have gone tired of their life and withdrew their PF, right? It is for everybody in all walks of life. We have done this discussion once, that you take the 10 commandments of the yama niyama in yoga, apply to any context, from a school student to a teacher to a professor to a retired person to an NGO leader to an organizational employee, right? You can contextualize it for their situation on how they can apply it, right? Purity of thought, right? How do I talk? How do I come across? Am I approachable in an organization, right? If a new hire comes in, or if a new employee who reports to me joins, are they petrified seeing me, or is there a sense of welcomeness? Back to your psychological safety, right? Ahimsa, non-violence translated to an organization can mean that in a particular dimension. So yoga actually taught me to look at me versus myself, me and my surroundings, me and other relationships in a different light. And we bring some of these to organizational context. And I wish I can do more and more around this as well, and somewhere imbibing it into our foundation work as well, is to actually say, how do you curate it as exercises, thoughts, trainings, as well as in our day-to-day interactions, that there is a sense of living the example to inspire others rather than just teaching others, right? That to me is what yoga is. And of course, we do have Yoga Day. I conducted certain sessions globally for Pega, where we focus a lot around, the the third and the fourth, which is asana and the pranayama section of it. But beyond that is where it is. The dharana, dhyana, samadhi, which is where you have, where you withdraw at will. So you're engaged in a heated debate. Can you suddenly pause and say, let's take a step back, drink water and come back, let's solve it? How unlikely is that to happen in an organization? You'd rather go home, burn over the weekend, throw some 50 WhatsApp messages, spend time on Netflix, come back in some proportion expecting an apology, right? It's a very human trend.
Yes.
I have done that. Many do that. But what your pratyahara, withdrawal, dharana, dhyana actually teaches you is composure, forbearance, right? Those are aspects that we should be engaged in training people who are converting from individuals to a manager to a leader. It can't be only the CEO's syllabus. It has to be everybody's thing. So those are potentially the opportunities, right? For example, the Journal of Neuropsychology, I think, or Psychology, I forget the name, but it's proven now that meditation actually increases memory, retention power, your ability to stay honest to the goals you set, and more importantly, decrease your stress levels despite being in an intense environment, right? You're more thorough, balanced, and stable. So there are very visible physical benefits of some of the yogic practices. So it's all about how corporates would like to see it beyond a particular color or a code, and then start really seeing as what's in it for my population. Google has this course on mindfulness, by the way. They actually teach their corporates to meditate. There are organizations which go to Art of Living to do this. They learn the Sudarshan Kriya and some of these. It can come in various formats, but as science is getting more and more profound in its offerings to individuals, you would see how these are very correlated rather than against each other. That's the final point I would say. It's validating what we knew as practice by giving the understanding of the logic and the theory behind it, thereby reaffirming our practices. That's what I would say is the biggest promise of our generation.
And I think it becomes so important that when we already have this wealth of ancient wisdom, we need people who can translate it to the current generation and workforce. Brilliantly
put. I think that supply-demand gap is where Atman Ramayana Foundation plays a bit of a role. But the inspiring thing that I am seeing is like my batch graduated with 30 people who are certified from various parts of the country. And I can tell you at least 10 to 12 of them have actually become teachers full-time. Right? There are others whom I'm hoping practice on their own speed. But these are people who paid a lot of interest to actually how it works rather than tell me the 20 postures I should master. They were talking around things like how will it help? How can I teach? How can I articulate value and things like that? With the new India, where with the advent of AI and all that we discussed, where salaried jobs, we really don't know where it is going on. India is about to see a huge rise in entrepreneurship. And this is said by people like Nandan Nilekani in the Global AI Summit and some of the other places, right? Because tech is enabling you get more of the human skills, outsource the day-to-day to AI and do some of the creamy stuff by yourself, right? That would mean transformative practices, elevating the dialogue, getting the principles, changing lifestyles, right? So I see, to your question, more and more people coming forward and really putting yoga on the priority map once again. And that brings us to the end of this podcast. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences, your insight and wisdom. I think we've covered a lot of ground from where we started, and your expertise your multifaceted experience and wisdom really showed. I personally had a lot of takeaways, and I'm sure everyone who has tuned in to the end also did. Wonderful. I'm glad. Thanks for asking some of the questions you have asked. Your ability to connect across various facets was very interesting to me. Are you by any chance multifaceted yourself? What else do you do? Apart from my work at NxtWave, I also am a trained classical singer. Oh, wonderful. In Carnatic music. And I wouldn't call myself a writer though,
But I enjoy writing. I've written a few poems or short stories and things like that.
Wonderful. Do you see one helping the other pursuits?
Definitely, definitely. I also, I'm a graduate of IIT, and I think I contribute a lot of that to the training that I've gone through when I was learning classical music. Because when you're, from the outside it just looks like you're trying to sing. But on the inside there's a lot of mental math that's going on in terms of the pitch that you should reach to, in terms of the rhythm that you should maintain. And you're also parallelly remembering the lines you should say and understanding the meaning of it. So you're training your brain to focus on 4 different things at the same time. It's not just singing a song.
Wonderful, right. Well, cheers to multidisciplinarism.
Yeah, cheers to that.
Very nice speaking to you today. Thank you.
I'm so honored that I got the chance to talk to you today too.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, one takeaway that we all can have from today's conversation is, in a fast-changing world, self-awareness is not just a personal luxury, but a very important tool to gain clarity and progress in life. And ancient practices like yoga are not just tools for personal transformation, but powerful frameworks for strong, resilient leadership. I'm so glad we had this conversation today. Thank you for tuning in. We have many more interesting conversations like this lined up. So keep learning, stay curious, and always believe in your potential.